In this lab, you're going to be investigating the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect is the result of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere that trap infrared light, infrared heat close to the surface of the Earth that make life possible. So the Earth absorbs light from the sun, and outside of the Earth's atmosphere, it radiates as if it had a temperature of 255 Kelvin or 0 degrees Fahrenheit. We can measure this by looking at the black body curve that's given off by the Earth. But the average surface temperature below the atmosphere is higher than that. It's 288 Kelvin or 58 degrees Fahrenheit. So what makes the difference between the surface of the Earth and outside of the atmosphere is the composition of the atmosphere that surrounds the Earth, and some of those molecules absorb and trap infrared light. This is called the greenhouse effect. So just like what happens in summer to your car happens with the Earth's atmosphere. So with your car, the light shines through the windows, so visible light from the sun will go straight through the windows, no problem. That's why we use glass for windows, because visible light travels through it very easily. That light will heat up the interior of your car, and the hot interior will radiate infrared light. So infrared light can't pass through windows as easily as visible light. So that infrared light gets trapped inside of the car. So you physically have to open the door or open the window to let that infrared light escape. So the windows of your car are similar to the atmosphere of the Earth. So the atmosphere, the lower atmosphere, will absorb infrared light but doesn't let visible light interfere. So the visible light from the sun will stream through the atmosphere with no interference. It'll heat the surface of the Earth. The Earth will become warm and radiate infrared light. That infrared light will get trapped by greenhouse gases in our atmosphere that keeps that heat close to the surface of the Earth. So just like with your car doesn't get so hot it catches on fire. The infrared light will actually slowly radiate out through the windows, through the car. Same thing with the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse gases, they trap the infrared light, but it eventually will seep out. It just slows it down, so it keeps the heat close to the surface. So the sun radiates mostly visible light and infrared light. So greenhouse gases include water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane. Not all gases in our atmosphere are greenhouse gases. Some of them do not do this effect. So greenhouse gases will absorb infrared light. They absorb them and then re-emit that light in a different direction. But visible light is not affected by these greenhouse gases. They're not trapped by greenhouse gases. So the sunlight that arrives to Earth, some of it is reflected by clouds and goes back out into space. Some of that visible light gets bounced off the surface of the Earth and not absorbed. This is why we can actually see. It's that reflected sunlight that comes to our eyes and allows us to see things. But some of that sunlight, that visible light, gets absorbed by the surface of the Earth. The Earth will start to radiate infrared light, so that infrared light will start to stream out into the atmosphere, but the greenhouse gases will absorb it and re-emit that light in some other direction. So instead of going straight out into space, it has to take a very jagged, longer path to get out into space. So greenhouse gases are natural. We see them on Venus, we see them on Earth, we see them on Titan. The most common source of greenhouse gas in our atmosphere is water vapor. Carbon dioxide is also very common, and those are both from volcanic eruptions. So when you go to Blackboard and click on the lab web link, it's going to take you to a PhET simulation called the greenhouse effect. And you can either click Run Now, or you can download it depending on how your computer is set up. One way may work better than another. So when you get it running, you're going to click, there are 3 tabs on the top of the screen. You're going to go to the rightmost one called Photon Absorption. So here you have a lamp that can produce infrared photons and visible photons. So in this simulation, infrared light is red, visible light is yellow. And you can, to turn on the lamp, you just move the slider and you'll see red or yellow photons coming out of the lamp. And in the center, you have a atmospheric gas molecule. And it's going to be your job to decide which gases interact with which type of light, infrared or visible. You can change the molecule you're looking at by going to the top and clicking on the different atmospheric gases. So you have methane, CH4, carbon dioxide, CO2, water vapor, H2O, nitrogen gas, N2, oxygen gas, O2. For the second part of the lab, you're going to go to the second tab called Glass Layers. So here you have these imaginary pieces of glass instead of the atmosphere, and you're going to be investigating how sunlight, visible light in yellow, and infrared light in red interact with this glass pane. So it's kind of like what happens in your car. So in the simulation you have a thermometer which measures the surface temperature of the Earth. And kind of like what happens with your car, it takes time for your car to heat up by the light hitting it. So same thing with the simulation. Give it a few minutes to actually register a temperature before you make a decision on whether the temperature is increasing or decreasing. And you can change the number of glass panes by choosing a different number. The third part of the simulation is the first tab, Greenhouse Effect. So here we're looking at a little town, and we can see some of the visible light and infrared light photons. And what we can't see, which is invisible and is invisible to us on Earth, is we can't see the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, but we can see their effect. So we can change the amount of greenhouse gases either by choosing a date, and it'll tell you how much of each greenhouse gas there is. So for water vapor, it'll tell you the relative humidity. For the other ones, it'll tell you how many parts per million of the atmosphere it'll have. You can also choose change the number of clouds, add clouds, and see the effects of clouds on the surface temperature. So with all the labs, you're going to work through the worksheet and then take the online quiz on Blackboard.